everyone. Welcome to Dialogue between Chinese and English Classics. I'm Professor Pu from the College of Foreign Studies at Jinan University.
And I am James, a guest teacher in the College of Foreign Studies at Jinan University.
After a brief introduction to Chinese American poetry and Marilyn Chen's writings, now let's take a detailed comparative study of her poetry and Cai Yan's poetry.
Professor Pu, in fact, I do not know so much about Cai Yan. Could you please introduce her to us?
Sure. Cai Yan, who had a courtesan name Wen Ji, was a Chinese composer, poet, and writer who lived during the late Eastern Han Dynasty of China. She spent part of her life as a captive of the Xiongnu until 207. After the warlord Cao Cao, who controlled the Han central government in the final years of the Eastern Han Dynasty, paid a heavy ransom to bring her back to Han territory. Cai Yan's poems were noted for their sorrowful tone, which paralleled her hard exile life. The famous Gu Qing piece, 18 Songs of a Nomad Flute, is traditionally attributed to her. The other two poems, both named Poem of Sorrow and Anger, were known to be written by her. James, the following is an excerpt from the Poems of Sorrow and Anger in 5-character form. I will read the Chinese, and would you please read the English after me?
Of course.
Thank you. 悲愤诗，处所多霜雪，扶风春夏起，翩翩吹我衣，萧萧入我耳。感时念父母，哀叹无穷已。有客从外来，闻之常欢喜。迎闻其消息，蛰伏非乡里。
It is entitled Poem of Sorrow and Anger. My dwelling is often covered by frost and snow. The foreign winds bring again spring and summer. They gently blow into my robes and chillingly shrill into my ear. Emotions stirred, I think of my parents, whilst I draw a long sigh of endless sorrows. Whenever guests visit from afar, I would often make joy of their tidings. I lost no time in throwing eager questions, only to find that the guests were not from my hometown.
Thank you. Here we can see the similarity between Marilyn Chen and Cai Yan, as exile is an important motif in Chen's poetry. Li Bai and Bai Junyi, to whose poems she frequently refers, have both been exiled. She states at the beginning of Dove Bamboo that this anthology is dedicated to Chinese revolutionary poet Ai Qing, who has been exiled to Xinjiang and whom she regards as a lifelong mentor. Most importantly, she echoes with Cai Yan, a great exilic poetess in Chinese history.
Yes, Qin's representative exilic poems are Exile's Letter, or An Essay on Assimilation, in Dwarf Bamboo, and Exile's Letter after the failed revolution in The Phoenix. Whereas Cai Yan's 18 verses sung to a Tatar reed whistle reflects a long tradition of Chinese exilic writing. Qin's Exile's Letter echoes 18 verses from several aspects.
That's right. In the 18 Songs of a Nomad Flute, Cai Yan records her miserable experience of being abducted by Xiongnu about 195 AD and forced to be the wife of their chieftain, giving birth to 2 children there and having to leave her 2 children behind. It makes people desolate and sad. The tone is mournful, as can be seen from excerpt of 18 verses. Let me read the Chinese to you. 荣节逼我兮为世家，仗我行兮向天涯。 云山万重兮归路斜，疾风千里兮风扬沙。人多暴猛兮如毁蛇，空闲背甲兮为骄奢。两拍张弦兮弦欲绝，自吹新折兮自悲嗟。James, could you please read the English translation of this poem?
I'd be delighted to. It reads thus. A Tatar chief forced me to become his wife and took me far away to heaven's edge. 10,000 clouds and mountains bar my road home, and whirlwinds of dust and sand blow for 1,000 miles. Men here are as savage as giant vipers and strut about in armor, snapping their bows. As I sing the second stanza, I almost break the lustrings. Will broken, heart broken, I sing to myself.
Thank you, James. In this excerpt, the barbarian area is described as heaven's edge, where the environment is harsh with 10,000 clouds and mountains, and whirlwinds of dust and sand. The environment Chai describes corresponds to what Chin calls wasteland or tundra. In We Are Americans Now, we live in tundra. And the men who are as savages as giant vipers and strut about in armor, slapping their bows, evoke chants, the barbarians are coming.
Here is the barbarians are coming. War chariots thunder, horses neigh. The barbarians are coming. What are we waiting for? Young nubile women pointing at the wall. The barbarians are coming. They have heard about a weakened link in the wall. So, the barbarians have ears among us. So deceive yourself with illusions, as if you matter, that brick and that wall. The barbarians are coming. They have red beards of beardless, with a top knot. The barbarians are coming. They are your fathers, brothers, teachers, lovers, and they are clearly an other. The barbarians are coming. If you call me a horse, I must be a horse. If you call me a bison, I am equally guilty. When a thing is true and correctly described, one double the blame by not admitting it. So, Zhangzi himself was a barbarian king. Horse, horse, bison, bison. The barbarians are coming. And how they love to come. The smell of the great frontier exults in them after Cavafy.
Thank you. More significantly, the two exiles' letters are clearly influenced by Cai Yan and her poem. The first exile's letter is based on a note from a distant cousin around 1964. The poem reads that the Chinese immigrants were exiled to Louisiana, a state in the south of the United States, worked in the field for a French aristocrat, and was suspected by his dying wife of eating their dog. Though the poem is written in an ironic tone, the bitterness cannot be covered. We are in Louisiana now, planting soil for an aristocrat. The farming work in Louisiana is originally occupied by African Americans. After the civil rights movement in the 1960s, African Americans gained some rights and gradually quit the job. Under these circumstances, Chinese Americans began to take their place as farm workers. The aristocrat for whom the Chinese cousins worked is a merely underprivileged French in South America, but ruled over the Chinese Americans only because he is white.
At least, the French aristocrat superficially claims that he understands the plight of the races. But his wife, a mad and arrogant woman who is dying of cancer looks down upon Chinese immigrants explicitly. She came to us, whispering, "There were dogs here who vanished in the deep of night. Prized settlers and pointers, well groomed and with papers. I don't believe you have erred, and I have eaten ours as your own."
Yes, in her eyes, even her well-groomed dogs are superior to these Chinese workers. And dogs with papers reminds Chinese immigrants of the hardship in gaining immigration and residence papers in the United States. However, the fact is, as the grandmother insists, it was your dogs, remember, who crossed the fence, who delighted in our cabbage. Chinese immigrants are exploited in the United States. Have you noticed the grandmother's last words? Life goes on, Manning. Even I've bloomed lovelier, I think, resembling you a little. But rounder we are profitable, and behind that bright red fence, the boys are watching, even now, the white boys. It further reveals that Chinese immigrants are not only faced with racial discrimination, but also gender and financial repression. In Chen's view, the plight Chinese American female immigrants are faced with in the United States is similar to what Cai Yan experienced in the barbarian north of Xiongnu. In the second exile's letter, Chen echoes Cai Yan more explicitly.
Here is Exile's letter. A world exists beyond the limits of this pain. Truly, there are higher vistas, better gazebos, miraculous avenues beyond these closed doors. Not to mention a poet humbler and kinder than myself, somewhere between Cold Mountain and Lake Lopna, who may never write again, and for whom the sun rises and sets only peripherally, now as she threats wheat or forces silk from mulberries. Not hers, as she walks into exile, vowing no return. She looks up, finds my face in moon. Dear cousin, do not mourn me or this empty sky, for the sky is limitless. Yet there is a limit to even sky. Like you, our fallow deer, on Regret Road, we must not tarry.
Thank you, James. At the beginning, the poetic speaker depicts her living environment in the United States as a world exists beyond the limits of this pain. Truly, there are higher vistas, better gazebos, miraculous avenues beyond these closed doors. This limited view reminds her of Cai Yan's residence somewhere between Cold Mountain and Lake Lopna in northwest China. The speaker continues to narrate that, not to mention the poet humbler and kinder than myself, who may never write again, and for whom the sun rises and sets only peripherally now. And she thrashes wheat and forces silk from mulberries, not hers, as he works into exile, vowing no return.
At the grammatical level, it is ambiguous whether she is talking about herself or about time. I argue that Qin is writing about both of them. Firstly, they are both exiled into what Qin defines as the barbarian area, where they may never write again. Secondly, in an alien world, even if they attempt to preserve their own tradition, represented by threshing wheat and forcing silk from mulberries, the tool or the land is not theirs. Thus, it is difficult for them to keep their tradition pure on the foreign land. By writing, she looks up, finds my face in the moon, Qin suggests her poetic lineage with Cai Yan. The former finds the root of female Chinese American poetry in the latter's exilic experiences and poem. After identifying with Cai, Qin walks into exile, vowing no return, and makes up her mind to be an exilic poetess, like Cai Yan. In Dorothy Wang's words, Cai Yan and Qin both shuttle between two cultures, and their bodies become liberal translators between cultures. Though Cai is forced into exile, while Qin chooses to exile herself.
That's marvelous, James. I cannot agree with you more. To conclude, as Cai Yan and Marilyn Chen travel between two cultures, their poems serve as written translation linking two cultures. Chen dates a Chinese American female poetic tradition back to Cai Yan, on the one hand, to empower the female speaker in exile's letter, and to challenge the male-dominated Chinese literary tradition. On the other hand, to create the literature of Chinese American female writers, namely a literature of their own. In this sense, Cai Yan is Chen's spiritual mother in Chinese American female writing. And that's the end of this unit. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.
Goodbye.